Oh, Siege's weapon?
Yeah, is there any way you can make that an actual rocket?
Just like one big rocket? Alright, oh, hey everybody, we're live! It's me, John, and it's Thursday, so that means we're painting, right? And today, I'm going to be going over how to paint black, and that might seem silly, at least to the initial get-go of it. But there's a couple different thought processes behind it on how to paint black properly. And how to get the effect that you want. And so that's the big goal, right? Is making sure that the black you're painting is the black you want to represent on the model. So whether you are doing something that's going to be on the shiny side, like what we're doing today for my Khador, or you want to do something a little bit on the matte side, like, clothing or, something of that nature, we'll go through and kind of talk about it. So I'm going to start with the glossy side of black first, and if we have time, I'll kind of go over the clothing, or a little bit duller of a black. So what we're doing right now is we are actually painting black over the black primer. So we're making sure this is really thin, and we're hitting the portions of the model that we want to paint black. And there is a super good reason we're doing this, and that's if we goof up our models at all, we can then go back to that black paint that we started with to fix up that mistake, as opposed to having to find something too close to the primer. So I'm thinning this down to almost, it's a little bit thicker than wash, but it's a very thin coverage. Because one, it's already black, so the transparency of it is relatively irrelevant. And then two, I want it to be able to flow into the cracks and crevices that maybe the primer didn't hit when we were priming this guy. So if you guys have questions over why I'm doing something in a specific way or anything like that, feel free to shout out. I'll be watching stream comments and all that sort of stuff. So one of the issues with doing it this way is that we will have a little bit of a downtime before we move on to the next step on this one, which is why we always have multiple models to work on when we are doing a project. I'm using a really kind of beat up paintbrush that I usually use for my mixing. The reason why I'm doing this is because it's a nice loose brush that allows me to base coat and get into all those cracks and crevices that we were talking about. And so with that, I got the first coat more or less done. Everything's covered. There's no real paint glopped on too much, and you can hopefully see that he's nice and glossy and wet from the stream itself. So while we're waiting for that guy to dry, we're going to hit up Zerkova, because Zerkova is what's going to be next. In terms of this is all for the Journeyman League that's currently going on here at the store, which I'm excited about. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, excuse me real quick, I'm pulling up the stream. If you guys haven't seen it, the Journeyman League, all the rules are going to be posted in the War Machine and Hordes general, so, or the Atlanta War Machine and Hordes. And then we are going from there. So, yeah. Got that up. So next is Zerkova. She is a full metal model as opposed to the Kodiak, who is going to be one of Privateer Press's plastic kits. So going back with the black over the metal primer, I find to be super helpful. It gives you a little bit more protection on the model, and then also it just evens out that priming. So the plan is she's going to be in, this is Zerkova 1, but we're going to paint her up as she is done for Zerkova 2. So once again, black armor with red trim. So once again, getting a nice base coat of black is pretty important. And remember, when you're doing this stuff, like, it's really important. Like, I'm using the Games Workshop black paint, the Abaddon black base paint, and it really needs to be thinned down. Super worried that if I put this on just as it comes out of the pot, that it will just kind of gunk up detail and destroy the overall look of the model. So you don't want to do that. So yeah, as I'm base coating stuff, I know it's not like the exciting riveting part of like throwing on highlights or doing cool technical effects. But as I'm doing this, guys, let me know what you're working on. Who else is working on Journeyman League stuff or thinking about starting a new army? I know those mystery boxes have all sorts of people starting new stuff.
I got the freebooters because I was actually thinking about bringing Raleigh.
All right. So, yeah. And make sure when you're on there, like, even as the base coat, you're not wanting to wick on too much paint in any one given area, just so you don't lose any detail on the basing stage, but things should be thin enough that you shouldn't really worry about that. And Zerkova is all sorts of based in this black paint. All right, cool. So we're going to set her down, let her dry for a little bit, and go on to the last piece of her starting battle group, which is going to be my converted Rager. So this Rager I did a special blade for, which you guys can hopefully see up here. And I made him like a little fell blade, and then I put some Orgoth icons and all that sort of stuff on him. Definitely happy how that stuff turned out. So, once again, even if you're not base coating stuff, like if the intended final product is not going to be completely black, this is still just a good step to go through. It's also very therapeutic. Oh yeah, I totally did this on purpose too, where I can take the shield off so I can get into his cracks and crevices a little bit better, so I don't have to worry about that hulking monstrosity of a shield getting in the way.
Terrible day. Just everything that possibly could have gone wrong.
So yeah. I am really excited about this Journeyman League and finally getting able to play my Armored Core that I've had sitting around for forever. And so one thing with this stage, I've been Zenithal highlighting a lot, and I do that mostly. I mean, one, it helps establish light, but then two, it helps me see the detail a little bit better so I can plan things out. But doing this step of base coating the black, it's giving me an additional step to kind of help me see the model and kind of see how I want to paint it and how and where I want the colors to go on it. So I'm getting a better look at the details up close and personal with a painter's eye instead of like a builder's approach to it. So this one is really kind of giving me, or this pass through is kind of formulating what the final product's going to look like. Because with the Berserker chassis that this guy's on, I want him to have a lot more of like metal showing, like the actual like silver mechanical metal, because he's less armored for the most part, and he's much more rickety than like the Grolar. So once again, establishing more of that silver on him when I get to that step will be really important. In this step, like I said, is just kind of nice to go through, see your model with new eyes, and do that, and also catch any misprimed areas, or like not necessarily misprimed, but like there's just some areas on these models that like spray primer just can't get to, and this step is really good for getting that like work brush that you have to like get up all up in there. So cool. Rager main body done, and now we get to go in and do the shield. The shield is going to be predominantly black, so once again, but the trim around it's going to definitely be red. So just get the main portion of the shield, and then any portion that's going to be metal, especially on the silver side of things, you definitely base coating it with a good black will kind of save you some time when you're coming in to do the initial tones with the silvers. So yeah. These Khador plastics are real fun. Got a lot of cool steampunky goodness to each one. So yeah, just making sure everything's set up, ready for the next step. Cool. So we got all of our black base coated, so make sure you give your brush a good rinse. And this is normally where I'm going to start setting up my steps for the next couple of stages, because we're probably going to be blending a little bit out of the get-go. Coal black from Privateer Press. It's going to come off as a little bit gray. It's a little bit more saturated blue-green if you're looking at it in person, but it's going to be a great base for the black. And what I'm going to do is take a good amount of it, because we're going to be using probably a fair bit of it, and setting it in my paint, and I'll probably add a little bit of black to it, just to darken it up. And then I'm mixing some of it into the black that I initially worked with. So once again, make sure things are nice and dark, and slowly building up. So with black and doing things on the metallic side of things, you want to make sure that you have a nice transition. And a lot of that can be accomplished just through a lot of small changes to the layer. And I'm adding a little bit of Menoth white base to the black to give it more of a highlight, and I'll be going up from there. I'll be doing kind of a dot of wash medium in each, and this I just find to make things a little bit thinner. So definitely want to make sure you don't saturate your paints too much, and build up from there. Alright, so we're going to go into the meat of things for the black armor, and we're going to start on the shoulder pad. And what we're going to do is we are going to start kind of blending in the black. And this will be a step that's probably going to take a lot of iterations. And I'll be doing two brush blending on it to blend and feather out each layer of the black that we're doing. So each subsequent layer should be a little bit more apparent on the camera.
I didn't know. I'm glad I looked rough because I kind of kept making comments, and I felt like the guy.
And when you're doing two brush blending, you're going to apply a bit of paint and then use a secondary brush to kind of blend it to the highlight you want. This is a skill that I'll definitely have to go over more in depth at another video. And what we're doing is we're blending out one of the highlights on the shoulder guard, and there'll be 2 highlights on each side. So, and we're just going to get subsequently lighter and blend it out.
I got trick shot, baby. I got 4 inches.
And this will just keep getting a little bit lighter.
Last time that thing was
Matt just started watching this. You can see him just started watching it. You can literally see him talking about it.
That was a bad decision.
I know, right? You are a
There's a lot of those out there.
So yeah, a lot of armies, at least in the background fluff, use black armor, and it's always really difficult, especially for new players to get into. So I appreciate everyone taking the time to come out and watch with me.
Yeah, he wanted it.
I can't shoot yet, can I?
He's been asking for it for quite some time, so I thought I'd help him out.
Yeah, everyone's getting the red box. Mine's coming next Thursday.
Second storm ticket. I remember you making a comment about like getting a second one in the mystery box. I sure did. When I opened it and saw that.
So yeah, when you're blending, I always like to pull the paint back towards the initial layer of it.
Mine's supposed to arrive and it's getting shipped from there. So we're gonna, hey dad, open that box. Send me 6 money. Tell me what it is. I got it's like if it's red, so it's just
Just throw it away.
nah, just hold on to it for like 4 or 5 months.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
$4 or $5. No, you can usually sell the high school. He's a medic. We'll see after this.
So yeah, I'm going to be moving on to the other side. And doing the highlights on each side like this is hopefully going to give more of an appearance of a reflective material.
That's what
I think there's a little bit of both. I think it's just like, hey, let's try to boost.
the only thing out of this one that I was like, was that like weird that I had
And doing 2-brush blending can definitely be improved by making sure your paints are thin and being even and consistent, and more importantly, being patient.
She's too hard for me. It's not good enough.
Patience will always set you free when it comes to painting miniatures.
He pointed out some stuff I just decided to do this because I really like it. I mean, and after playing enough Cruiser 2 games, I kind of feel
Always make sure you're controlling how much paint goes onto your brush. Coming in with the final highlight on this armor panel.
at least she plays paint.
Hopefully
I like top of 2. She gave him like
getting it some nice good blends.
like behind the six, I like really bad at battle reports. No, I like watched her. Like even when I was a good player, like good.
One of the cool things that you can do, especially with like armor panels that are on different levels, is make sure that like the highlight doesn't just follow the same path, stagger it a little bit, because it will make a more believable light source. And when you're blending, always make sure your brush is wet. And it's going to be going a lot of back and forth. I'm hoping this is apparent to anyone watching the stream.
Empty shell. I haven't talked to her in years. She was already.
Fish, is that true, or are you just being nice? Because right now it's looking pretty black, even on the cameras. So, while I'm waiting for this one area to set, I'm going to do a little bit of edge highlighting on the black, where I'm taking the flat portion of my brush, and I'm going to be slowly taking the edge over the raised crease. And I will reinforce this later, but it's a big part of, once again, making that model believable. Coming down on this little shoulder here, doing the first wave.
That's because everybody, there's only like 2 people who play red. It's not trash.
Yeah, I do. I have like everything. Every 2 of
Be a little bit more aggressive with the second one, and then blend it out.
And then I'm trading. You think that I have enough red, but I'm trading.
Yeah, I don't. That's why I don't understand why.
Once again, coming in for the edge, using the flat part of my brush to get in that crisp line, and set in there. Coming back and reinforcing.
Like 2 games today, you'll be running this fairly.
And then keep coming back and forth, making sure things are set up.
No, I appreciate it. I just.
I'll probably be highlighting this up a little bit further. Because I need a little bit more contrast with this, being a little too, oh, what is it, timid? Make sure the brush is clean before dipping into the pot, red with white base. And getting a nice kind of seafoamy color. This will be good, especially for those like sharper edges. So I'll take a thinner brush, make sure it's clean, come back, and do the edge. So, and you always want to make sure that the highlight is going to be brightest where your final light source is going to be. And I'm probably going to dull down a little bit of the edge highlighting, especially towards where shadows would naturally fall. So yeah. But usually with doing something like blacks, you can just not have to like coat the whole model with the highlights or the shadows. Just doing a very specific area and working from there. Sean Twitty's a guy who knows a thing or two about painting armies with black armor.
I'm not outwardly rude to, but I kind of snub him all the time because he's so he's clearly on like pretty far. Like he didn't need the spectrum.
Oh gosh, yeah, he was just like.
So once again, not taking the brightest highlight, but like the second most to do some of the other of the edges.
Yeah. Like, you have someone to room with, but I have not planned it at all. Like, yes.
Like, yes. Absolutely. I just wanted to get it on.
One of the nice things about using paints that are going to be on the thinner side is also if you like goof up on the edge highlighting, you can come back and kind of work it in, so you don't have like a wonky highlight. So I'm coming back with my second brightest color and keep on establishing those highlights. So at Khador, the shoulders are always going to be the biggest thing.
No, man, I don't think he'd survive that job because, like, I don't think they'd hire him as like a resource.
And then finally coming back with some of that brightest one. And this one we're really going to have to work in. Make sure your brushes are nice and wet. And that you can quickly blend them out.
Well, we don't do therapy. Oh god, no, you do not do therapy. We do like process research, so, like how do he does fMRI work. He like puts people in scanners and asks, like has behavioral questions, looking at how the brain works.
Is he a researcher or a patient? Or a subject rather?
Ooh, that's a question.
Good question.
He's just wandering into the campus, just
So yeah, that's kind of the step that we're taking with them. It'll probably be hopefully a little bit more apparent when the model sets up a little bit more.
He's a nice enough guy.
So coming back, doing another wave of highlights. And this is where probably a wet palette, like one of the situations where I'd highly recommend getting a wet palette.
Oh really?
And then coming back and working it in.
It's not even like he doesn't say bad things. He just has these bizarre ideas on him. Like it's not even like he's rude. He like warped ideas on sort of dating rituals and how they work. Like he's got like super traditional, but not like overly macho traditional. Just like that's his mind of it. He's got like nerd level. He's got that heart.
And remember, when you're like working on this sort of stuff, I always like to work from inside to outside. So normally I would paint the metallics first, but one of the nice things about not painting the metallics first means when I come back and want to do the metals, or I can be a little bit. I can be a little bit looser with the highlighting on the blacks because I'm doing the metals later. So yeah. Well, thanks, Sean. I'm sure you said that a while ago. I've just been engrossed in what I'm doing. But yeah, so this is basically the formula we're going to do. And we're just going to constantly work our highlights and shadows together.
Have they planned like
and finding where we can put those nice sharp
like
highlights.
if they're bringing Epic back, I want to get into it. But like, oh, okay, gotcha. Just trying it out. Okay.
That's great. Hey, the problem went away once I threw a lot of money at it.
So yeah, it's coming in. Do. And don't ever be afraid of making mistakes on this stuff, because you can always fix it. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask or message away. I do this every week for the people that watch, so
Look, I got the ins.
Don't think that your local PD uses that Craigslist system. You're looking for shit on Craigslist. Yeah, you're an idiot if you're looking for shit on Craigslist. You might get lucky one or two times, but you're rolling dice. They do.
so that's getting a little too bright.
There's like, there's one, so for instance, I used to work SWAT in Miami, and I worked close with a couple of vice cops. Instead of staying at lieutenant level. So multiple lieutenants talk to one captain. So you might have this group set to stay in this area of town, this group set to stay in this area of town, whatever. They try to keep them separate. But that doesn't mean they don't go to the same town either.
So coming back in with some of the original colors to kind of darken things down. Remember, kids, you can always use your thumb as a palette. Twirl the brush.
And then they're like, "Aw, damn! I just saw another cop thing."
And blend it out.
Oh, somebody's still losing that one.
So when are you expecting the new Monster Apocalypse stuff coming out?
Monster Apocalypse, I think we can finally say that the official street date's going to be the 21st of September.
Ooh!
We will be running demos all Dragon Con.
Nice.
So yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Do you know what booth we're going to be in at DragonCon?
No, we don't have our assignment. We're going to be in the gaming hall,
Okay.
but outside of that, I don't know. So we'll be in America's Mart in the gaming hall. We'll have booths set up for Monpok, War Machine and Hordes, Age of Sigmar, and Warhammer 40k, of course.
That's going to be a lot of games tonight.
Yes, yes, it is. So once again, finding the area that will catch the most amount of light, sharp corners, edges, all that sort of good stuff.
Have a good night.
I forgot that we started late, so we're probably going to wrap up early so we can get Joe out of here. So any questions for me before we call the stream a little early? All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming in. Sorry for the short stream. Next week we'll be at DragonCon, so please check us out there, and we'll be happy to teach you how to play some games. All right, goodbye, guys. Oh yeah. So Sean Twitty will be doing the. Oh.